Good afternoon, Barbadians at home and those abroad, and everyone watching us online. I would just like to welcome you to a press conference where we want to address a particular issue regarding funds that were given to the Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister of Infrastructure, Ms. Santia Bradshaw. And this is probably the last thing that we expect to be doing coming up to the Old Year's celebrations, where we should all be out enjoying ourselves and ringing in the new year. It is really sad that we are in this position that we have to frontally deal with this issue, but it is one that we thought was so important that it could not wait for next week, and we want to address it really in a very serious manner. So what I'm going to do, really, I'm just going to quickly walk you through where and why we are where we are regarding the particular issue and the circumstances surrounding it, and then I will walk you through some of the legal ramifications and around the issue as well. So let's start with the fact that the Deputy Prime Minister's constituency's office was broken into, and it was from that particular break-in that it came to the public's attention that a check worth $7,500 was made out to the payable to Ms. Bradshaw, and by the order of Errol Clark Associates. Now, those are factual sets of information that are in the public domain due to the break-in, and then obviously the matter before the legal courts of Barbados. So those are facts. Office was broken in. There was found a check worth $7,500. That check was made out to payable from the information reported in the press, from the information before the courts, payable to Miss Bradshaw from a particular one, Errol Clark Associates. Now, then you have the situation in this morning's press as reported, where Miss Bradshaw tried to play down the issue and saying that she would hope that does not stop persons from donating to persons who may be in need. And, she really made the point that this is something that has occurred with her over the years, and that these donations were regular parts of her involvement, if you like, with her community. And I don't want to misquote her, so I will just read what was reported as she stated. She says, however, reference is made in the social media posting about a check written to me in my name and issued by a well-known firm of professionals. The check for $7,500 represents a charitable contribution to my annual Christmas hamper and food voucher program. I've been spearheading this effort for several years now, and I've been assisted by several businesses and business persons over the years. This program predates my becoming a minister. Now, from this particular set of information, what we could extrapolate is that this particular occurrence of checks being written to Miss Bradshaw is something that's happened over the years, because that is what she alleges, or at least she alludes to by her own statements. Again, this is not any particular set of information that we are making up, or these are just things that are factually on the record and that Miss Bradshaw herself has stated in terms of her behavior in receiving checks and contributions directly payable to her. Now, this raises a number of concerns when it comes to integrity in public life, and it also raises a number of concerns in terms of the behavior of public officials and their engagement with business professionals in terms of receiving funds. Now, there's an old saying that it takes two hands to clap, and we will have to really unpack that. So let us understand where we are. So we know that there's a check. We know that the check was given by our Clark Associates. We know the check was payable to Miss Bradshaw. The check was not payable to the branch. It was not payable to a charity. It was payable to the minister in her own name. Now let us step back a few. We also know that Errol Clark Associates is a consultant engineer, and we know from reports in the paper as well, all of this is factual information available in the public domain, that a report from March 19, 2023 in the media, that Mr. Errol Clark from the Errol Clark Associates Limited was on a panel addressing the issues in White Hill, St. Andrew, in terms of road repairs there. So what we can connect is that Mr. Clark has been employed by the very Ministry of Transport Works and Water Resources. Now, we know that the minister responsible for that ministry is Ms. Santia Bradshaw. So here we have a situation where a person who obviously is engaged in government activity and government contracts, we obviously would have to know the number of contracts, and we would obviously ask the minister to furnish us with that information. And Mr. Clark himself from Errol Clark's Associate, if he may wish to do so, should be in a position to furnish us with the information in terms of how many government contracts he's engaged in. But from media reports dated the 19th of March 2023, we know that Mr. Clark, through his firm, seems to be associated with the repair work and roads works in White Hill in St. Andrew. And there is a picture of, at that time, Mr. Clark sitting next to the then Deputy Chief Technical Officer, Philip Tudor, and Mr. Ramel Senator, discussing the project with residents in that area. So now we've established these lines of engagement, I also want us to then therefore look at those lines of engagement in terms of the integrity in public life law. Now, let us be also clear something here, that the integrity in public life law was passed earlier this year. And I'm just going to go to the Parliament's website so that you are clear about all of these dates. The notice for this legislation was first given in January 2023. The correct date, exact date is January the 27th. The legislation went through first reading, second, Senate, and eventually it was passed on the 16th of August 2023. So basically this legislation, we're almost at the end of the year, has been a year in making. The legislation has been passed. As we understand it in information reaching us, the legislation has not been proclaimed. So what the government has essentially done is performative. They've passed the legislation has not been proclaimed. There is therefore no commission to oversee the integrity in public life law that has been passed. So the question, therefore, another question is begs, why did the government pass legislation with no intention of proclaiming the legislation and giving authority to the commission that is to oversee integrity in public life? So I think everyone in Barbados is probably under the assumption that the Integrity in Public Life Commission has been up and running, and that this legislation has the full force of law. As we understand, the legislation still has not been proclaimed, but it has been passed in both the lower and the upper house. Now, this situation only gets worse, if you like, for the minister, the Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister of Infrastructure and Public Works, because the minister is also leader of government business, and therefore should be fully aware of the very legislation that she would have piloted in the lower house to introduce integrity in public life. Now, when you go to section 23 of that legislation, it makes it very clear that a person who is in public life, which would cover the Deputy Prime Minister, who receives a gift worth more than $2,500, or whose spouse or child receives such a gift, shall make a report of that fact to the commission. So really what you're supposed to do if you're in public life and you receive such gifts over $2,500, you're supposed to report it to the commission. Now, in reporting those gifts to the commission, you have to make a determination, at least the commission will make a determination of whether it's a personal gift or it's an official gift, and where the commission finds that the gift was given to a specified person in public life personally, was trivial or not trivial, but the intention was to reward for doing or forbidding to do something else, basically some form of bribery, and this is according to the law here. The commission shall specify the person in public life either to retain the gift or the gift was not in kind, the commission shall in writing direct the person to deliver the gift or its value to the minister responsible for finance within not exceeding a period of 30 days. Furthermore, this particular legislation provides offences for those who fail to comply, of which would apply to the Deputy Prime Minister. And if you're found guilty of an offence and you're liable on summary conviction to a fine, which shall not be more than 3 times the value of the gift involved in the commission of the offence. So you have it here that it is very clear that if you are going to be receiving, or if the Deputy Prime Minister was in a position to be receiving such funds over the value of $2,500, those funds should have been declared to what should have been set up by now, a commission under the Public Life Integrity Bill. Now, on record, the check was a value of $7,500. So we are already in a position that a declaration should have been made. The declaration not being made, we can read into this that under this particular law, therefore the Deputy Prime Minister is in contravention of an offence under the Public Life Act. And it is very telling and perhaps somewhat serendipitous that the person piloting the bill is probably the first person that would have been caught by the very law that they brought to Parliament and not knowing what the particular legislation says, because you have broken it by going over the amounts. What I also find very telling from the statement from the Deputy Prime Minister is that somehow they're encouraging persons to donate, as if encouraging donations in terms of breach of the very law that was passed is okay. And I am here to make it very clear that the Democratic Labour Party, under my leadership, and I've said this before, I am probably the only leader in public life at this moment who can say categorically, never been involved, nothing, there is nothing here. And I can actually throw stones because nobody can throw them back at me. And I am making it very clear that this is not something that will ever be tolerated under a Democratic Labour Party government, or it will never be tolerated even before we're in government under my leadership. Former Prime Minister David Thompson found the Barbados Labour Party wanting with another check in Haggett Hall. And this seems to be a pattern of behavior in the Barbados Labour Party in checks written to persons. Again, those are matters of public records. And we would want the Barbadian public to engage not only with the Democratic Labour Party, but to understand what is at stake for the democracy, that no form of corruption or no form of perceived corruption of any kind will be tolerated. What we have here is a situation where I believe that the Deputy Prime Minister needs to resign because the matter is such a serious matter, and she should resign forthwith. And in her resignation, investigation should be launched into the relationship between the person who would have provided the funds for the Deputy Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister, and a relationship between that particular consultative firm and government, and how many government contracts they have received. The reality is there is no way that you should be receiving any kind of funds, whether it's for donations for a children's party or not, or Christmas hampers or not, for anyone from anyone under your ministry. The Minister of Works and Transport and Deputy Prime Minister cannot be receiving funds from someone involved in works and building projects. The two is a clear conflict of interest, and it is telling that the Deputy Prime Minister does not seem to recognize that conflict and actually tries to pass it over as if there's nothing to see here. You know, there's a whole saying, if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it is a duck. And I would hope that the Prime Minister has the strength to remove the Deputy Prime Minister. The Deputy Prime Minister was already removed from education for botching the first, round of education reform. To put her in works that has resulted in an even worse state, and our roads are in a deplorable state. And now we have to add to that what looks like a situation that should not be becoming if we take this and analyze it according to the integrity of public life law that was passed and piloted by the very leader of government business. So it is very clear under the law that anything over $2,500 should be declared to the commission. We have a particular situation where this check is definitely way over the amounts. There was no declaration because there's no commission, as we understand, because the government has not declared the integrity in public life. So in that situation, what should have happened and what should have contended is the very same thing the Prime Minister said when they first got into government, that they will follow the spirit of the law. I remember that. I remember the Prime Minister waving around the brown envelope, that, the sealed brown envelope. They've submitted their documents to me. We know how much they own and how much they earn, and it's in a sealed envelope, and it's with the cabinet secretary in the cabinet office. So therefore, if the excuse from the government is that, the commission will be set up in due time and we're waiting, but you can do the same thing. You could literally use the same process. You follow the spirit of the law until the law is actually, up and running in full. There's nothing that will stop you from following a law that has been passed. It has been passed by both houses. You've passed the law. Now you fail to break the very law that you passed. So what we have here is a clear violation of the law under Section 23(1). That violation is followed by sanctions under Section 24(1). And there I would say, if you look at Section 25(1) in terms of the code of conduct for ministers, the Deputy Prime Minister has also contravened that particular code of conduct, because there is a code of conduct under the law, under the fourth schedule for persons in public life, which states that a person exercising public functions shall ensure that he or she performs his or her functions that administers the public resources for which he's responsible in an effective and efficient manner, afford no undue preferential treatment to any person, and you shall not use your office for improper advancement of your own financial or other gains. And you should not directly use your office for private gains and those sorts of things. Here we have a situation where it is undeniable the check was written to the Deputy Prime Minister. The check could have been easily written, if it is a clear donation, to the constituency office or to a charity or to someone to facilitate. And furthermore, as I said, the conflict of interest, no agencies that you are involved in determining their contracts should ever be donating money to you as a minister. There should be arm's length, a hands off, no kind of relationship at all. So therefore, if you are the Minister of Public Works, nobody in public works should be donating any agencies to you. If you're the Minister of Education, nobody involved in educational resources should be donating resources or money to you. That is a clear conflict of interest. We have to get used to this and get used to a new culture which promotes integrity for Barbadians and which promotes integrity for our country. The reality is, at the core of the many failures of this government, it is one of really corruption. It is one where you are not exercising good judgment and use over the public funds. And moreover, in declaring that no government that I would lead would be able to engage in this kind of behavior, because if it were me, the Deputy Prime Minister, you will be hearing a press conference that they will be fired. Simple. Don't have time for these kinds of matters. There'll be no him and hawing and trying to gloss over this issue. Person will be fired. Apology given to the public of Barbados, straight up, and we move to continue in the work of the government. What I will also guarantee is that under a Democratic Labour Party government, the government will publish a clear record of all the monies that it is paying out to contractors, so that Barbadians are clear who is receiving government money, and vice versa. A record will be published of all those who owe the government money and have not been paying government money. We have to stop this foolishness in this country. We have to draw a line, and we have to weed out corruption. We have to weed out bad behavior when it comes to lack of payment to government. And we also have to weed it out from the other situation where government or government officials may be involved in behavior that is not above board. The reality, as I said, it takes two hands to clap. Therefore, we have to deal with it from both ends. There's no pretending that this is only a government problem, that it's not a private sector problem, because from the situation here, we can see that both agencies, both sides have to be involved in this. So what do we the big takeaways from this? One, it is clear Deputy Prime Minister has contravened the Integrity in Public Life law. Two, that law has not been proclaimed, however, so we wonder what the government is hiding and why they're waiting why they're not proclaiming the law and getting the commission and all the agencies set up to get that law functioning. And three, we think that this is such a serious matter that the Deputy Prime Minister should resign. And four, there should be a full investigation into this particular matter in terms of all the contracts that the consultative firm that wrote the check to the Deputy Prime Minister have been given under her ministry, and a clear review of all of those contracts. So I think that is where we are at, and I will just hand over to my colleague Felicia and then Walter to make a few interjections.
Good afternoon. Well, the reality is that we are seeing a matter of a clear conflict of interest, and a conflict of interest primarily means when one individual overrides their interests for their own personal gain. And that personal gain could be any matter. And in this matter, we're seeing that the Deputy Prime Minister is saying that she used the funds for a Christmas party. Of course, we have to be mindful that the Deputy Prime Minister is also a politician. And so we have to look at the way the things are. We can't put our minds other places and just take things for face value. So the idea is that when you look at the entire situation, we tend to look at what we call blue-collar crimes different from white-collar crimes. We have to deal with the matters the way that it is, very, very similar to what the Auditor General was speaking about in terms of the level of conflict of interest that happens by whether it's government agencies, whether it's civil servants, or whether it's politicians themselves or public servants. So we need to clamp down on such unethical behavior. And the reality is that we're hearing that, yes, it was a Christmas party, but we cannot say that the ends justify the means. If the end is unethical, the means is also unethical. If the ends is illegal, then of course the means will also be illegal. A conflict of interest is a very serious matter in business ethics. It's also in corporate ethics, and persons should have realized, and I think these are people that are very familiar in terms of how progress is being done, in terms of accountability and transparency. And so one of the reasons why we have those acts and legislation is to ensure that there's an element of transparency and there's an element of disclosure. And that is very important. There was no disclosure in that matter. And it took a common thief to expose such matters, such unethical conduct and behavior. And we're not going to hide about the fact that what has happened. This is a very serious matter. And I think it is time that we take such matters when we see such practices, such unethical practices happening in the public domain, in the public view, and the kinds of messages that we are sending out there. Because we basically saying that perhaps it's okay to do that, but a man that stole the check should be penalized, but not the persons that engage in the act in the very first place. So we cannot make moral decisions, we cannot make legal decisions determinant on who makes them. We cannot have what we call subjective morality. If the thief was penalized, then everyone who was engaged in that activity has to be held accountable as well. This is a society where we want to practice equity and equality, and so that every individual must be held accountable whether you're the ordinary person on the van stand, or you're a politician, or you're a public official, you have to be held accountable as well. And I think all Barbadians should hold this government in account. And there's one thing that I'd want to add. We've heard quite a number of cases where we've had a probe, we've had investigations, and nothing comes out of it. And I think this is the time that we have to take such matters very seriously. Why? Because we do not know what other gifts has been given in the past. We want a thorough investigation in this matter. Why? Because now it's in the public domain and there's admittance of what have occurred. This is not something that was said from somebody else's. They came to the public domain and admitted that this is what occurred and this is what transpired, and it takes us as the public officials, it takes us as the public and citizens to come forward and to ensure that everyone is held accountable. A conflict of interest can have detriment on the governance of the society. What it actually does, it questions democracy in and of itself, because we do not know what our public officials are doing. So we expect that the government will take notice of what has happened, and of course will have to take into consideration the very glaring conflict of interest that have taken place. And as I said before, conflict of interest may not necessarily be something that is negative, but in the case of a public official, you'd have to declare what has occurred. You receive funds and it should have been declared. You had no reason to not inform the individuals that had to be informed. So you made a decision, and you at some point at the end of the day, you have to be held accountable and you have to hold the consequences of your actions. And again, as I said before, every individual, sometimes we make error in judgment. We make errors in judgment because we are human beings. But that does not mean that we do not have to face the consequences of those errors in judgment that we make. So in such matters, this is a very serious matter, because we do not want such kinds of unethical practices. It speaks very deeply of corruption, and we do not want to have any kinds of such practices, whether it's in government or whether it's in any other aspect of our society. As I said before, there's no real distinction between white-collar crimes or blue-collar crimes. A crime is a crime. And every single individual, once you engage in any act that violates any law or rule, then it is up to us as citizens to ensure that those individuals are held accountable.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Felicia. Happy New Year, and the members of the press and those who are watching on. I listened to our president just now, outlining the facts of this matter. And I hope that persons don't think that because the amount on the check was $7,500, that makes it okay, and it is something that we should not be here discussing. You cannot enact a law, or you can't pass a law that is only for the Medes and not for the Persians. And this seems to be what is coming over, because in that said act, any public servant that receives money from any entity to which that public servant is connected or is engaging, that public servant would have been called before the Public Services Commission and probably looking for a job. And so it cannot be that this act satisfies one section of the society, but then when it comes to the ministers, then it is not enacted. That to me is so wrong. This is an issue that has to be dealt with, whether it is $7,500 or $100,000. And I wonder if it was $100,000, the reaction might be different. But it should not be different, because once you break the law, you broke the law. And that is what we're talking about. And this comes back now to another question, this whole idea of campaign financing. And that is something that we in this country need to look at seriously. We have all of us in this room, have heard the rumors. All of us. about when elections are being called, money being spent, money being given to the fellas on the block. All sorts of rumors have been placed up there. Integrity legislation was supposed to correct a lot of this. And it's very ironic, according to what the president said just now, that the first person who would be caught with this is the Deputy Prime Minister, whose responsibility was to lead this piece of legislation, and who, because of the ministry that she runs, would have had some degree of work being done by Mr. Clark within that ministry. It's an attachment. There's a correlation to what is happening here that we, as Barbadians citizens, must be aware of and we must be concerned about. This is not an issue that can be shoved underneath the carpet. It is not. And it begs the question as to whether or not there were more checks like this. It is that a check was found by an individual who broke into the Deputy Prime Minister's his constituency office. But the question asked, we should ask ourselves, have there been other donations like this? Is it? And that is something that we need to worry about. We must be concerned as to whether or not, and the president made the point, we continue to talk about accountability and transparency in government. Persons who are given government contracts should be listed, and every person in Barbados should know this is our money that's being spent, how it is being spent, who is being awarded the contracts. Okay, they have satisfied all of the areas that they should, and these people are being awarded the contracts. We should be aware of this. It shouldn't be anybody cloak and dagger that somebody's hiding behind somebody's shirt tail, because it is our money. It is our money. I too would like to know. I passed up the road going to Sam Lord's Castle. Where a lot of money was spent on that road. We had some rain the other day, and the road almost impassable. There's flooding in the road. That is our money, and we need to know why is it that is happening. So these are questions that the $7,500 is going to relate to other questions that we as citizens of this country will need to ask. It is our money. We need to find out who are those individuals or those companies who are getting the contracts from government. But like I said before, you cannot have a law that only pertains to the Medes and not as well to the Persians. That, brothers and sisters of this country, it is a reason for disaster. It cannot be an us and them. It is either that it relates to all of us, but it cannot relate to some and not others. And I totally agree with the president on this one. I totally agree. This breach cannot be allowed to pass, and I think it is in the interest of this country that the Prime Minister comes to the people of Barbados and say to them, because of this, and because that we believe in integrity legislation that we place on the books, and we believe in accountability, that the Deputy Prime Minister will be forced to resign. So we look forward to that. That way we can move on and say, yes, transparency is here in this country. But until such time, I can't say that, and this party will not be able to say that. But I will tell you this, the president has made the promise that it will not happen under his watch.
Thank you, Walter. And I just want to reiterate the particular solutions that we are placing on the table to deal with this. And one of the things that I commit to, and I will say this over and over and over and over again, is that we will go beyond freedom of information. We will implement open government. We will publish all those who owe the government money and who the government who receives government money. We'll publish these things. It will be clear. As Comrade Walt said, there can be no cloak and dagger. It is time that we start having this type of transparency in our democracy, in our government. We had a situation recently where it took a freedom of information in Cayman Islands to discover a contract between Barbados Tourism Inc. and Cayman Airways on seat allocation for a new airlift between Cayman and Barbados. That is ridiculous. That should not happen. You have to go outside of Barbados to get information on the running and use of taxpayers' money. And as I said, I will go beyond freedom of information, and we will just have open government. The information we publish is a matter of fact and a matter of due course, where persons are clear about who will be receiving and who's receiving government money, and also who owes the government money. It is time that we have that kind of accountability and transparency in our government. You know, there'll be lots of people on the outside shouting and calling and getting on about this and that. The reality is, government and the management of government is a serious business. And what we did today was a serious analysis. We walked you through the law, we showed you the breach, we explained where the government is, and we explained the consequences of the breach, and then we presented clear, viable working solutions so that something like this could not happen under a government we need. And that is how you do serious, credible opposition. I could get up in here, we could all get up in here and rant and rave, and you leave here feeling good with yourself that somebody get herself. But what does that do? Because at the end of the day, do you know what the Democratic Labour Party is? We are presenting ourselves as an alternative government to the people of Barbados. That is the seriousness that we take this in. This is the kind of serious analysis and walking through of legislation, because if we were in a parliament, this is the kind of interrogation that we would have to present. We would have to get up, we would have to go through the law, we'd have to explain what the minister did, there would have to be discussion, we'd have to call a debate. That is how you do credible alternative government in this country and anywhere in the world, and that is what the Democratic Labour Party is about. Now, that would bring us really to the end. As I said, we just wanted a very clear, tight, short presentation in terms of what the issues are, where our minds are in these issues, and what we expect. And now I'm just open to questions from you.
Just one question from me. Yeah. Colvin Manzi from Nation News. And my question is just quite simple. Given the fact that the bill has not been, the act has not been proclaimed as yet, and there is no integrity commission, we don't even have a public accounts committee functioning. How do you propose? Who do you propose should do this investigation that you were calling for?
So what we had when the Prime Minister was trying to make a soundness about integrity legislation and behavior in public life, which we know was just all, as I said, all theater and no real substance. If I recall correctly, the submissions at that time from all the ministers, their declaration of assets was put in a brown envelope and given to the cabinet secretary. And therefore, the whole idea was that the cabinet secretary would be responsible for holding the information about the assets of members of parliament. Given that that was the precedent set by the Prime Minister, absent an integrity commission, until we have such a commission, the cabinet secretary should be empowered and to be empowered to do the same thing. If you're holding the information, well, he goes carry out the investigation as well. Because until such time, you are obviously the person that was designated with the ability to hold information on assets and to police the conduct of ministers in terms of their integrity in public life. And I would say this as well. The reality is all of these members of parliament receive about $2,500, if I believe, monthly to assist with constituency matters. So what is happening to that constituency allowance? Where is the breakdowns and the declarations of how that is spent? So you had the Deputy Prime Minister with her PR stunt trying to soften the impact of this, as Brother Maloney said, just because it seems like it's $7,500 doesn't make it any less serious than if it was $30,000. The act is the act, and the reality is, under the law, they said above 2,500. So the law even said this has gone way past the baseline of what the law said. So when Minister Bradshaw comes saying, the money was to feed people, as if that is supposed to say that because you're taking money in order to feed people, that you cannot be caught under the legislation, that doesn't exempt you from the behavior. You already get a constituency allowance to help with your constituency. And if there is issues in terms of ability to feed persons in your constituency, that also falls on you as a minister and your government policies. So what, you trying to correct it at the front end, or you taking money at the back end to feed people? So in a way, you are simply perpetuating the cycle of poverty and dependency to keep you in your position. And then all of that, you add to the fact that you're breaking the very acts that you passed to stop corruption and to promote good conduct in public life. The whole thing is really damning on the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister, because do not ever forget the Prime Minister walked up, down, across Barbados, all across the world to complain and to be home the last Democratic Labour Party government about corruption and behavior and conduct in public life. And that is not to say what happened in the past is right or wrong. It's say that is the approach that the Prime Minister took. So you cannot do that and then come here and support this kind of behavior where you are contravening and breaking the very law that you have implemented. This is their law. If you want to say, let's be clear, this is the Bradshaw law. Sandy Bradshaw law. You piloted this. You were leading government business. You did this, and then you turn around and break your own law. And then what should be more insulting to the people of Barbados? You do it as if, ain't a big deal. This has happened all the time. This began for years. As if that's to make it right. It does not make it right. And we have to get to a point in this country where these sorts of matters are prosecuted in a serious manner. They are dealt with by the courts of law, and they're dealt with by the institutions in this country. The reality is this government has all the seats, every single seat. You passed the law. Why haven't you proclaimed it to stop this very behavior that you just engaged in? Because this is what the law stops. The law stops the very behavior that we saw reported on the front pages of our local papers. So there's a lack of accountability. There's a lack of transparency. There's conflict of interest. There's a lot in terms of the application of equity, as my comrade Felicia made the point. If the thief who broke into the office is to be held accountable for his actions, why isn't the minister held accountable for her actions on the law? Because there's a law. Why aren't you being held accountable and you're trying to gloss over as if there's nothing to see here? The reality is there's a lot to see here. There's a lot to see here, and we have to demand accountability. We have to demand transparency, and we also have to demand that our democracy requires good behavior in public life. This is not an example of good behavior in public life, and the minister has to be held responsible. Something has to happen. The repercussions and the consequences under the law have to be carried out. And furthermore, the minister needs to be relieved of her duty, or if she had the humility, the good sense, and let's put it this way, and the conduct that the law requires of someone in public life, she would resign. That's what you would do. That is simply what you would do.
Brother Mosey, this to reply to you to the question that you asked, though. You cannot in one breath say that you're introducing a integrity in public life law to form this new governance model that the Prime Minister always speaks about. Okay? And then the question that you ask, are you saying then that once it was passed in the Senate and the lower house, that there is an amnesty? Is that what you're saying? There's an amnesty until it is proclaimed. So the person, so you have a right now to do whatever you want to do until it is proclaimed by the thing. It can't work like that. It cannot work like that. You said this law was supposed to protect the integrity of persons in public life, to protect ordinary citizens from any persons pointing fingers at them as far as corruption is concerned. It was to improve your governance models. You said that. And so if you're saying all of these things, you cannot now, after the bill goes through those two stages of Parliament and the Senate, that is some amnesty being laid down and say, well, it didn't enact that, so we cannot enforce it because until the enactment, then she has done nothing wrong. No, it doesn't work like that. It cannot work like that. The fact that you came to the public in Barbados and you touted this thing, you remember? You blame the Senate. You blame the Senate in the last sitting for not allowing the bill to pass. That is a fact. It came back. It went through. Now you were saying that after putting in all of these restrictions in the act, that the act is being broken, but the argument is it has not been proclaimed, so it is okay. It cannot be okay. It cannot be okay. And like I said before, you cannot have a law that is for the Medes and does not apply to the Persians as well. It is wrong.
Ryan Jones from Barbados today. Just for my benefit, in terms of this might be a two-part something. In terms of the proclamation, who really is responsible for the proclamation of the act itself? And if you've made a call for something to be done with regards to the offended person to be sanctioned under the act because they haven't been officially passed yet, what next if you don't see something coming from it?
So in terms of the first part, who's responsible for the proclamation, that will be the government. So in terms of how legislation works, it goes through the first stage in terms of the lower house, it goes to the upper house. Then once it's passed, the government has to put it before the president for a signature, so that it officially becomes law. Because we know under our Westminster system, even though we're a republic, if it is not signed by the president, it is not actively law. So you can do all you want in terms of the house pass, but it's not actively law. That said, we have an example where at the beginning of this government, the Prime Minister made a point to say that sometimes you need to follow the spirit of what the law is trying to do, not necessarily the letter of the law. And here you have more than a spirit because you actually got it written down. So be very close to the letter. So you should follow the spirit if the Prime Minister is being true to what she was trying to do, because at that time they took the assets of persons and said, you know what, we're going to hold these until we get the particular laws passed and up and running. So if that is the situation, now that you've got the law and it's up and running, even though the agencies surrounding this law are not actively set up because of lack of proclamation, that should not hold you back, as Comrade Walter is saying, from carrying out the law because it's on your books. That makes a farce of what you do in Parliament. That makes a farce and a mockery of our democracy and everything that we do to say that you're going to pass a law, but you know what, I'm going to let it sit there for maybe 2-3 years, not proclaim it. I can just do what I want until I feel like comfortable that I've gorged myself enough. And then once I feel like I gorged myself enough, and my throat in the trough, and I do everything, then the law will be proclaimed because it's fine. Because during that period, the law technically, not even technically, the law didn't necessarily apply to me. that cannot work. The law has to apply. The reality is you have, from the facts in the public domain, a donation of some sort, a gift of some sort, being made out to a minister for more than the value of what the law knows. The law says $2,500, anything above is clear, $2,500 has to be declared. It has to be noted to the commission. It has to know who gave it to you, the approximate value, what the gift is for, was it an official gift, was it a personal gift. All of this has to be declared. So you have a situation where that was not done. It seems, it's the worst thing, that the minister is doing this on the hook, that, actually, they were in the law. So I okay for now. I do. And that cannot be right, and that cannot be the case, because that tells me that you are not taking it serious, that you're not taking integrity in public life serious. I am promising, what I promise, this is a commitment, and anybody who knows me knows I'm serious. There will be integrity in public life under the Democratic Labour Party government that I need. Because I am telling you right now, God is my witness. If this were me, she would be fired. No questions. Because you cannot allow this type of behavior. There can be no excuses. I'm waiting for the excuses. And I don't want anybody who has moral integrity and value to try to come before anybody in this party right now, or the people of Barbados, and make an excuse for this behavior. I would like to see what the level of excuses are, because they can't be. They cannot be if we are going to turn a corner and create a new culture of good behavior in public life. We cannot have this type of behavior. And I wanted to know why they're not appropriate legislation. What are you waiting for? You're waiting to continue bad behavior for another few years before the next election, and then you're going to get to the next election and say, oops, you know what? Parliamentary cycle dead, so we got to start all over again. Is that what you're waiting for? Because that's the only thing that we can be waiting for lack of proclamation of something that has been a year going through the cycle. And something that started from even way back in 2020. So this is what, 2020, 2020, 3 years, you get finally get the bill, and you're still ain't doing nothing more. You can't be serious.
But from that, Munzi, the National Insurance Act went to Senate, was discussed in Senate, passed in the Senate, went to the President, proclaimed almost the same day or the next day, and then allowed the minister to speak the following on Monday, went on the Thursday, Friday, proclaimed on Monday, when the Minister of Labour was allowed to get up and say, we have a new act and a new entity called the National Insurance and Social Security Service. Right? So I'm saying that you did it for that. And then you felt that this was so important, then why did you not do it for this as well? You have enough time to have done it. Enough time. So that's the question.
And to answer the second part of your question, if the Deputy Prime Minister does not step down, does not resign, what the country, what the people, the electorate, the voters, the children, the grandmothers, the workers, everybody in this country will get to see the Prime Minister has not only a high level of tolerance for incompetence, there's a high level of tolerance for conflict of interest, there's a high level of tolerance for potential corruption, there's a high tolerance of level for bad behavior. And we've seen it with the Minister of Education. We've seen it now with the current Minister of Transport, and we've also seen it when this current Minister of Transport and Works was Minister of Education. So the reality is they continue to make a mockery of the people of this country under the cloak of protection from the Prime Minister. So really, this goes back to the type of leader that we have and the type of, say this very clearly and very, very carefully, the type of country that we're trying to create. And it comes back to, what are your value propositions in life? What do you see as important? What do you value in life? Are you your brothers and your sisters' keeper, as this party constantly promotes that. Is at the core of its philosophy. Because if you are your brothers and sisters' keeper, you can't look at this situation and just walk on by. You can't be like, this is okay. Because that's not what a brother and a sister's keeper would do if we take it back to base foundations and base philosophy and base thinking. You're going to do something about it because it's what they say, right? Whether it's your friend or whether it's not your friend, and especially if the person is close to you, that is when sometimes you have to demand a higher standard. And the consequences sometimes have to be higher because they are your friend. And if they've let you down in that capacity, then you have to act. And the Prime Minister will have to make that decision whether her friendship is more important to her than the people of this country that you are elected to lead. That is the reality. That is a decision and a choice that the Prime Minister will have to make. Your friend, or you've been elected to be accountable, to be transparent, to be open to the people of this country. Who are you going to choose? And if the Deputy Prime Minister remains in her position, the people of Barbados will have known the choice that the Prime Minister has made. It's that simple. Well, I want to thank you for coming out on such short notice for this press conference. I want to wish you, the members of the media, a really good New Year. Process New Year. I hope you have a good New Year tonight. I was going to say don't have too much fun, but there's not such thing as too much fun. And we look forward to seeing you in the new year as we roll out some of our new initiatives and schemes and some of our engagements. And we look forward to your coverage. I really thank you for your engagement over this past year, and to wish the people of Barbados also a happy and prosperous new year. Best to you and your families. Thank you very much.